putting this together. I actually know a few of the people who are involved in this, and one of the people, Vanessa Fears back here, who probably doesn't like being pointed out, is actually a graduate of our program. I am so proud of her because she is such a special lady, and her case manager, Elsa Guajardo's over here, who also doesn't like being pointed out. But this is a topic that I wish we could have done a long time ago and made some really serious changes, because it's something that's kept people from reaching out for help for many, many years. When we talk about mental health issues and we talk about suicide, we don't think about what we could have done to prevent that. Well, maybe we do now, but years ago we didn't. At our last felony drug court graduation, I should probably tell you more about who I am, I guess. Maybe some of you don't know me. I am the judge for the Bexar County Felony Drug Court Program, which includes the original drug court, the driving while intoxicated. We also have a reentry program, and the biggest part of our program of all is our co-occurring disorder program, where we deal with mental illness and substance use disorder. So, and I've been doing this for, let's see, I started as defense attorney for this program in 2002 when we started talking about putting it together. We took our first client in 2004. I was appointed judge of the program in 2007, so I've done this for a couple of years now. But one thing I had never done, having gone to, 20 some odd graduations, been part of that, is tell my own story. And this year, I decided it was time. Part of the reason for that was because some things were happening in our program with some of our people, some of the things that I was seeing going on, thinking maybe it's time to bring this out into the open. My story was that my father committed suicide. That was back in 1978. And he had been going through a serious bout of depression at the time. His life was falling apart, but he didn't reach out for help. He reached out for a handful of pills and alcohol, and he didn't wake up the next day. My sister was the one that found him. She was 17 years old at the time, so she was pretty blown away. But thought about this for a long time. For most of these years, I thought my mother was responsible because they were going through a divorce. It was a pretty bad situation. Sometimes I thought, no, it was my father. He had choices. He decided to do this. Finally, I figured out, maybe it's a little bit of both of those, but maybe the big driving force in 1978 was mental illness had such a strong stigma. As I said at graduation, it was one flew over the cuckoo's nest. It's straitjackets, it's padded cells, it's sanitariums, it's places that you don't want to be. It's, look at all those crazy people out there, let's lock them up. So maybe if we were in a different place back in those years, maybe that wouldn't happen. Maybe it wouldn't have happened. Maybe my dad could have. Okay, maybe could have made his grandchildren. But, sorry about that. It did happen, but it doesn't have to happen anymore. If we all pull together and we all let everybody know it's okay to reach out for help, then we can all recover together and we can make sure things like that don't happen. I mean, let's face it, if you had if you had heart disease, if you have cancer, diabetes, or something like that, and you let somebody know about it, are they going to think you need to be locked up somewhere and put away from everybody? They're going to think, I feel for you, and I hope you get help. I hope there's something that we can do to make it better. So why shouldn't we look at it the same way for people with mental illness? And one of the things that we see too, and in the program that I'm part of is we see a lot of substance use disorder that's tied in with that. And that's probably why that part of our docket is about 57% of our entire population of 250 people that we have in the program. So those are things that we're dealing with together. And I know we're here for the stigma of mental illness and suicide and those sorts of things, but we can also talk about substance use disorder because there's a stigma with that too. A lot of people think that it's a weakness of character, it's a moral failing, it's something to that effect, but there's a whole lot more that goes into it. It's something that we can deal with as a disease, which is what it is. Even the Supreme Court of the United States back in the early 70s said so. So why is it taking us this long to get to this point where we can start thinking about dealing with that too? But I appreciate all of you being here today, and probably took more time than I'm supposed to. But Mr. Gilbert Gonzales, I think, is next up. And you want me to introduce him to?
Yes, please.
Okay. Gilbert is one of the most knowledgeable people that I know when it comes to issues involving the community, mental illness, mental health. I mean, this man's been involved in this for so long that I probably shouldn't even be here talking today, except I got a pretty good story to tell now. But this man knows everything. And if you don't believe me, just listen to him because he's pretty awesome. But he is the director of mental health for Bexar County. And I think, if I remember correctly, we're the first county in the country, or the first county in the country to have a mental health department, and he is the first person to direct that department. So I think that's a pretty big deal. And if you all welcome Gilbert Gonzales.
On behalf of everybody here,
All right.
I don't think you need the microphone.
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
So when Judge Glenn we were at the graduation, and he decided to tell his story. I was watching folks listen to his story, and when he shared his father's loss, I saw that people stopped breathing. And I went, oh my God, the room was full at easily 200, 230. Were any of you all there? Mm-hmm. Tell me if I'm lying. It was full. And you could have heard a pin drop. So, Judge, thank you for that incredible courage. On behalf of Commissioners Court, Judge Nelson Wolf, I'd like to congratulate you all and say welcome to the event today. Many things came through my mind, and I was, where's Vanessa again? We were we're trying to get Vanessa to, tell her story, and I said, you just gotta talk about what you're experiencing and what the message you want to leave. First of all, you wake up in the morning and you go, I'm gonna go and do this talk, and it's on suicide and death and all that. And I got excited. But I got excited for you because my question to you is, why are you here? What brought you here? What is it that you need to hear about or learn about? And after all, we are in a college. And you've got some incredible folks around you. You got Terry Mabrito over there smiling and getting mad at me for pointing her out, but talk to her. President of NAMI, one of the most incredible organizations, and an organization without which we could not function, literally. So I just want to talk a very, very, very little bit about the topic today. So I'm a little old. So in 1982, 84 is when I was, I'll tell you how old I am. I'm so old that I was actually given a certificate as a Texas psychologist. And now you can't be a psychologist unless you have a PhD. But they were grandfathering us old people. That's how old I am. And I remember, I graduated, I had all these degrees and all this stuff, and I'm licensed now, and I'm rolling my sleeve up, and I said, okay, come on, public. And I had a family come in. The family came in, beautiful, beautiful family. Father was an alcoholic. It was just a whole issue. And I worked with a beautiful young little girl, and I worked with their older siblings, and I thought we were making some great progress. And then I got the call. I'm not going to make her name up, but let's just call her Diana. Diana was 8 years old, and she committed suicide. And I got mad at two people. I got mad at myself. I said, I'm supposed to know what to do. I'm supposed to be educated. I'm supposed to be on top of this stuff. But the person that I got most mad with, God, how could you let this happen? How could you let me fail so horribly? And probably there's, what you begin to understand is what we're talking about today. Suicide. It is not, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary feeling. But the ramifications are so broad that in many cases it's decades before you're ever even able to face it. And I'm thinking, oh my God. So the brain, the physiology of the brain, every thought that we have is a chemical and electrical interaction. So there's electricity, and then there's those chemicals that kind of transfer to the neurons, and that's a thought. When we have a mental illness, it's just like when you have diabetes or cancer. There is an interaction in the brain that's out of balance. What affects our lives so quickly, so much, is that imbalance happens in the frontal cortex. And the frontal cortex is where we learn to plan and learn to project and so forth. And so, drug addiction, drugs work. You want to go high, you go high. You want to go low, you go low. But it creates a problem. More people commit suicide after ingesting substance abuses like alcohol, pot, or whatever, than anything else. And so we need to know that is a physical event that's happening. On the other hand, we're social human beings. Ernie Stevens, does anybody know her? Except for the officers in the back, they know Ernie Stevens. But if you know Ernie Stevens, he's probably one of the, next to our officers in the back, one of the finest human beings, law enforcement officers on the planet. And very early on in 2000, 2001, 2002, so you're old again. We were talking, and he was saying, well, I don't know about this suicide thing, and how do we talk about suicide? And I said, Ernie, when someone tells you they want to come in, and by the way, a plug-in for our law enforcement officers, you're going to get a chance to talk to them here later on, so please take advantage of that. So I said, Ernie, when somebody tells you that they want to commit suicide, what they're doing and what they're communicating to you is, I want the pain to stop. Yes. I want the pain to stop. And unfortunately for some of us, we're not able to affect change, and the person commits suicide, and now we're left as family members to have to deal with that.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
And how do we deal with that? Well, today, everybody talks about PTSD, post-traumatic stress. We gotta address it, and we do. It's a huge issue, and it is. But we very rarely talk about post-traumatic growth that happens as a consequence of coming to terms and understanding, that we're human beings, that we are going to fall apart. But we're human beings that make changes. And that's why I'm so grateful that you are here today. Melissa Lucio and I, as part of our department is small, it's growing. We're the only county-based mental health department in Texas. And we live for these events. In fact, I was in South Texas, Padre Island, on the border. So they said, well, why don't you just cancel the event tomorrow and stay for the weekend? I said, no. If you're gonna be here, we're gonna be here. So I just want to leave you with a thought, because I always gotta give you homework. So, and I typically tell people, pay attention to what's around you, what your environment is. Here's the problem with our children are facing things today we never had to deal with right now. If they're curious about suicide, by the way, 50% of you will have suicidal ideation. If you're breathing, you're gonna have suicidal ideation at some point. It's when you take action that you need clinical intervention. So our kids today, they jump on Instagram and Slapjack or sorry, and those things and YouTube. So I've got a depression going on, and I'm thinking of hurting myself. Now I can go on YouTube and look at all these videos on how to commit suicide. And guess what happens? The more you become familiar with something, the more you emulate it. So we have to guard against that. We've got to make sure that we surround ourselves with people that are here. You want to learn. You want to find out what the solution is. So my solution, and Judge Glenn talked when we were talking, and I said, my wife and I, they like to walk a lot. Exercise is always the number one. Just get out there and do something. Be here. Again, thank you for being here. And number two, and this is the thing that'll put people like me out of business, is if you look at how many of you, I'm hoping a lot of folks here are familiar with the Serenity Prayer and the wisdom to know the difference. You will face things in your life you cannot handle. When you are stressed at that degree, your frontal lobe shuts down. And sometimes you have to just understand that you're gonna need to go out. And so the last thing, and this one will really put people like us out of business. And it's very hard within the context of what we're doing today. Extremely hard. It's horribly hard. And that's to maintain an attitude of gratitude. It's very hard. You've got a daughter, you've got a son, you've got a parent, and they're talking about suicide. How the heck am I going to be grateful? It's hard. But physically, gratitude, again, physiologically, biochemically, what it does is it releases a certain amount of endorphins that powers you just a little bit. And then you get to your minister, or you get to your friend, or you get to that some person that speaks those few words, and you're in a little different playing field. So I am incredibly excited that you are here, that you have made the choice, that you said, I'm going to learn something. My challenge to you today is leave here learning one thing. And for those of you, if you're overachievers, it's okay, I understand.